Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, it's Jeremy Corbyn's big day, the annual Labour conference in Brighton, and of course a year in which, at the beginning, everybody speculated he was going to be a complete catastrophe for the Labour Party, and then we got the snap surprise general election in which he performed very much better than anybody thought that he would do. And in many ways, Labour are down in Brighton celebrating. Yes, they're still, in terms of parliamentary seats, some way from power, but there's no doubt that the government are in trouble, so their tail is up. And here is an upbeat Jeremy Corbyn speaking today.
Labour is ready to tackle inequality, ready to rebuild our National Health Service, ready to give opportunity to young people. If there was no other reason for the Tories to go, their self-interested Brexit bungling would be reason enough. So I have a simple message to the Cabinet. For Britain's sake, pull yourself together or make way.
So there we are. Jeremy Corbyn says, pull yourself together, get Brexit sorted out, or make way for Labour. Well, of course, that isn't going to happen, and there isn't really going to be a snap general election, not unless the Tories have some sort of huge fundamental split over Brexit, which I guess isn't impossible. But when you look at Jeremy Corbyn and you hear him, and OK, today he was talking about imposing rent controls, he was talking about new housing developments, making sure that they weren't just excuses for areas to be gentrified. He was talking about tackling inequality. I don't exactly know how that's going to happen, but that's something that people want to hear. Yep, I get that. He also said that he would guarantee access for the United Kingdom to the single market, which basically means Labour want us to stay in the single market and customs union, a theme that we've talked about over the course of the last couple of weeks. But when you look at Jeremy Corbyn and you look at the front bench that's there, is he right when he says that actually they are ready? So I want you, please tell me, is Labour ready for government? And you can ring. I mean, maybe you think absolutely. He's got the A-team. They can do the job. In which case, ring me on 0345 6060 973. Or perhaps you think they're miles away from government and they frankly haven't got the experience to do it properly, in which case you can text to 84850. Or perhaps you think there should be a different Labour leader. And in that case, you can tweet using the hashtag Farage on LBC, at LBC. And I'm going to run a Twitter poll on this for a bit of fun to engage people. Twitter poll question is very, very simple. Is Labour ready for government? And that will run up until 10 to the hour. And you can take part in that by going to @Nigel_Farage or at LBC now. And I'll reveal the results later in the show. Is Labour ready for government? Well, I'll give you my view on it very quickly. I look at Jeremy Corbyn and I look at his background. I look at the fact that he was in Parliament for 33 years. At no point in that 33 years did he run any committees. At no point in that 33 years was he a party spokesman for anything. I mean, this guy, and he may be a very nice, honest bloke and all the rest of it, maybe he is, but this guy has never run anything in his life. And I look at most of that front bench and I think the same about them. I don't think they're ready for government. I don't think they've got the depth of experience of actually running things. That's my view. Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong. John informed me. John, is Labour ready for government? Is Corbyn right?
No, I don't think he is. I think the problem is that he's in charge of a crew of clowns, basically, and none of them are inspiring any confidence. Who can forget Diane Abbott's miserable performance? McDonald's. That was
the remarkable interview on LBC Breakfast with Nick Ferrari, wasn't it?
Yes.
And she was asked to go through the numbers to increase the number of police, and Nick's mental arithmetic actually is rather good, and she frankly didn't know her numbers. And if you remember, John, later on in the campaign, there were other embarrassments, and then with a week to go before the election, she withdrew as a spokesman because of ill health, but she seems to be in robust health again and back on the front bench.
Yes, well, she was taken out of the firing line because she was an embarrassment.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
I think what the public have to be aware of is the left-wing thuggery that is so common nowadays. And if they get into power, you'll see a lot more of it. And I would also say this will be our first ever fascist left government if they get in.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, John, OK, you don't think they're ready, and you're very clear about that, but do you think they've got a chance of getting in?
Yes, I do. I think you have to remember that people don't so much vote governments in, they vote them out. And
Yes.
I call this the battle between the tots and the trots. The tots being the tired old Tories, who, let's face it, are a pretty miserable shower. But my view on this is Hilaire Belloc. But better hang on to nurse for fear of finding something worse.
The trouble is the nurse that we're being asked to hang on to in the form of the government are so split down the middle, John, and so at each other's throats that it's not making them very electable, is it?
Oh, well, that's all to the good as far as Corbyn's concerned.
It is, yes, it is.
But this will be the first step in the pathway to communism with Comrade Gorbachev as our first commissar.
Very good. John, thank you. Yeah, I was actually struck. That phrase, power for the people. Some of you might be old enough to remember a BBC comedy show in the 1970s called Citizen Smith, where Wolfie, who was I think it was called the People's Front of Tooting, and power for the people was his great slogan. And it was a very funny programme, but I was very struck by a lot of what Corbyn said today, that it did strike me as being very 1970s. My next caller is Dave in Rumney. Dave, good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. So, is he ready?
No. I mean, let's be honest about it. With the manifesto, which was impracticable, the same thing today with his speech. It's got the troops moving. Everybody's euphoric about it. But does he realise he's got 4.5 years to the next election?
Probably. Well, yeah. So is he ramping up the rhetoric really way too early, Dave?
Well, far too early. He'll never keep it going, and people will move away and see through it. There'll always be allegations of not possible, lying, and things like that. And with the people in his party, they'll all shoot themselves in the foot, and it won't be a practical. He'll never keep it going for 4.5 years.
So he'll never maintain that momentum. Also, I'm very struck, Dave. That actually, when you think about the momentum that he built up in every way during that election campaign, he's already said, oh, actually, we're not going to abolish all student debt. He's done a complete U-turn on the European thing. So 4.5 years is a long time to get found out, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a long time. And, I mean, you take, for example, we're all talking about unity in the Labour Party. Now, it was only a couple of months ago that the Welsh Labour Party wanted to split from the National Party because they didn't like the way Corbyn was going.
Yeah. Well, it just shows you, Dave, how volatile the political world we're living in is. You know, you're right to say he can't keep this going for 4.5 years, but if the Tories tear themselves to pieces, he might get a chance sooner. Corbyn's manifesto will be based on the Roy Orbison hit single, Anything You Want, You've Got It. Well, he did in the election campaign promise an awful lot to people, and we're already seeing, as I say, backtracking on things like student loans. Stella in Wimbledon. Good evening, Stella.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello. Were you impressed today?
I was very impressed. I really was, because what Jeremy did was he spoke to the man, the woman and child on the street.
Mm-hmm.
He talked to real people. He is in touch with all the people who have been neglected and ignored by the Tory party.
Well, it's interesting, Stella, that you say that, but I just an observation here from me. I look at Corbyn, I look at Sir Keir Starmer, I look at Diane Abbott, and I could go on. They're all the London Labour Party. They're all from really very privileged backgrounds, all living in very expensive houses. Are they really in touch?
Nigel, I need to stop you there. Jeremy Corbyn isn't living in a luxury house.
Right.
I don't know about the other two, so let's just keep the facts straight.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn comes from a very comfortable background. Of that, there's no doubt.
That's irrelevant. That makes him even better. Because
the point I'm making, Stella...
that he knows he could have made that choice, but he's made the choice to listen to the public.
The point I'm making, Stella, or the question I'm asking you, is, they could almost rename the party, get rid of Labour, just call it the London Party. Are they really, really connected with struggling communities in the far-flung parts of the UK?
They are, because a lot of things start in London that then seep out into other parts of the UK. Mm-hmm. And really, they're all suffering still from the terrible mistakes that the Tory party has made, which is ignoring housing, ignoring the NHS, ignoring teachers, ignoring the police force, ignoring firemen, ignoring nurses. These are the people that run this country. And they've been ignored by the Tories.
It was interesting that he said that really, in some ways, Labour's politics and its support was catching up with the banking crash that happens. He said politics finally caught up with the crash of 2008 because we offered people a clear choice. I could argue, Stella, very strongly that actually it was Gordon Brown's policies that made sure the crash of 2008 was a lot worse than it needed to be.
I think really we need to stay in the here and now, Nigel. There's no point cutting up the past and splitting it apart and analysing it. The here and now is there is more homeless people, there are more food banks than ever before, and I see people sleeping on the streets. It's disgusting. In 2017,
so you think, Stella, you think that Corbyn is actually in touch with these people, yeah? You feel that Corbyn is in touch with these people?
He's in touch with these people, yeah.
Right. Stella, final question. Is he going to win the next election?
I hope so, and I hope that anyone listening now will be voting for him.
OK, Stella in Wimbledon, thank you. A massive Corbyn supporter. She thinks he's really in touch. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. I'm here in the US, and it's 7:45. Jeremy Corbyn's big day. He says he and the Labour Party are ready for power. And I'm asking you whether you think that's the case or not. And you can, as you know, call 03456060973. You can text 84850 and you can tweet using Farage and LBC at LBC. And you can also take part in our Twitter poll. Is Labour ready for government? And you can go to at Nigel_Farage or at LBC and vote. And I'll give you the results later on in the show. Now, one thing Jeremy Corbyn didn't talk about was the issue of anti-Semitic abuse, which has been simmering through this conference. All he said was, never, ever can there be any excuse for the abuse of anybody by anybody. This against a very interesting background, because Labour, the party, has been threatened with a ban on holding future conferences in Brighton unless it tackles anti-Semitism. Brighton and Hove's Labour Council leader, Warren Morgan, said he was very concerned that the anti-Semitism was actually being aired publicly in fringe meetings and on the floor of the conference. In a letter to the Labour Party General Secretary, Ian McNichol, Mr Morgan said, as the Labour leader of Brighton and Hove Council, I will undoubtedly face questions as to why we allow any event where anti-Semitic views are freely expressed to happen in our city, particularly on council premises. As a Labour Party member, I expect the inquiry announced today to take firm action. As leader, I will need reassurances that there will be no repeat of this behaviour. and any actions. Otherwise, we will not be able to accept further bookings from the party. Quite something, isn't it, that the modern-day Labour Party is being accused of open anti-Semitism happening at fringe meetings and on the floor of the conference. So, is Labour ready for government? We're going back to South Wales. I'm going to speak to Taff, who lives in Barry. Taff, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Let me nail my colours to the mast before we start.
Sure.
I'd like to finish with a question, personal one for you. But I became disenchanted with politics when they voted Thatcher in for the third term. And then when Blair took over, with her endorsement, I thought, I'm not playing anymore. Nobody's listening. Everybody's telling lies, and we're all believing it. And things got worse and worse.
Well, she didn't really endorse him, did she?
Well, she did. She actually said that she admired the man. This is pre him winning the election, and I thought to myself, good grief! I mean, this woman has been chased out by her own party for being so far out of touch. And your point raised about the privileged backgrounds of some of these people in the Labour Party is spurious. When you realise that people like Charles Dickens or Dr. Bernardo, the people with privilege are the ones, when they got a conscience, are the ones who should defend the people who are disabled, the people who are disenfranchised, the poor, the weak, those who cannot defend themselves. And the Tories have done this now, and it hurts me. But when you listen to Corbyn sit down with any interviewer, and they're all very clever men, and they all try to trap him and catch him in little caveats and little bits of information. One thing I like is he doesn't seem to look off to the side to spin doctor. He tells it as he thinks. Now, whether or not he's flawed, and I believe he is, and I believe the party is flawed, at least we're getting some integrity. And that is something I've not seen for 20 years. I almost feel, I don't want to be messianic about this, but I feel like almost reborn. I feel interest in politics again. There may be a chance for it.
Well, Taff, I have to say, and don't forget, and I said on this show back on the day that he launched the Labour manifesto that I thought we were seeing a different Jeremy Corbyn. I saw somebody that was energised, and I agree with you. When he's doing that head-to-head interview, he looks the interviewer in the eye, and he does answer the questions. I agree with that, Taff. Now, he's clearly had some big difficulties with the European policy because his parliamentary party have a different view to him. He clearly realises they massively overpromised on student debt at the election, but the fact that he comes across to a lot of people as being rather more sincere than other politicians, I grant you that. I absolutely grant you that. And my comment about privileged backgrounds, what I was saying, Taff, was that it seemed to me that if you look not just at Corbyn, but at the team who would form the government if he won the election, if they won the election, that they all seem to live in North London, come from remarkably similar backgrounds, and I just wonder whether amongst that team there is the depth of experience to actually run a government.
If I respond to that, if I may, if you take just the wig-wearing uncle across the pond with the Tourette syndrome, without a lot of money, you're not going to get into anywhere. And without privilege, you're not going to get leadership. And if you have no privilege or you've had to scrap your way to the top, there will be dark skeletons in your cupboard and they will be exposed and you will be run away. You'll be chased out. And no matter how much you feel that you have a right to stand up and protect the weak, you will be exposed and ruined. So you have to have a certain amount of privilege to even aspire to take leadership of any sort of nation or any sort of democracy, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, fine. Okay, Taff, my comment was they seem to come from a very narrow group, and I'm just not convinced that they're really going to reach out to South Wales and to the north of England and into places where they need to win a lot more seats. They've got to win a lot of seats back from the Conservatives, and I'm just not quite sure that what I view as a very metropolitan London Labour Party that's going to have a manifesto to boot, I'm not sure that actually is going to reach out to those areas, Taff. That's my view. But look, you are a strong believer in Corbyn. I thank you for your call. And Taff, reflecting a view that many do, that Corbyn comes across as being very, very sincere. I get on text, Nigel, I find it interesting that even though Corbyn has been an MP for many years, you chastise him for not running anything. Yet you back Trump, who has no experience. Bill, Trump has run a huge property empire through good times and bad times. Trump has run stuff before coming into politics. I'm not sure Corbyn has run anything. All right, Sir Keir Starmer, he had a big job. You know, he was the public director of public prosecutions. But most of that front bench, seems to me, haven't run very much in their lives. And the question isn't just about Corbyn tonight. The question is Labour ready for government? I'm not completely convinced. David in Leeds is my next caller, new caller to the show. David, good evening.
Hi there.
Hello there. So, are they ready for it?
Possibly not, but neither is anyone that I've ever seen. I mean, you ran for Parliament 7 times and lost every single time.
Well, it's called first past the post, David. In fact, we got 4 million votes. We got as many votes as the AfD got in Germany, and they've got 90 seats. So, what's your point?
Well, how many times have you been past the post, Nigel?
Do you know something, David? If you want to play this game, in 2014, I led a party to win a national election, something no one's done since 1906 that wasn't the Labour or Tory parties. Your go.
What do you want? Do you want an MP because you haven't got any?
Sorry, do you have anything to say about the Labour Party, or are you just ringing up to have a sort of...
Labour Party. Justice for Germany.
David from Leeds, you're a new caller. Don't bother again. There really isn't very much point. David, who says he was a Labour supporter, I'm not sure Jeremy Corbyn wants people like that. Who knows? Perhaps he does. And perhaps that's why they do turn a blind eye to all sorts of things going on. And if you believe the leader of Brighton and Hove Council, who's a Labour man himself, they've even turned a blind eye to anti-Semitism, which isn't really particularly pleasant, is it? Mervyn is calling from Bow. Mervyn, hello.
Hi, Nigel. Nice to meet you. I think they've got 2 chances, a dog's chance and no chance. That's because we don't vote in this country for left-wing or communist parties. When Miliband stood, he was like a Tory compared with Corbyn. They're virtually commies. Nobody in this country is going to be stupid enough to put them in the driving seat.
Well, you say that, Mervyn. You say that, Mervyn. But come on, let's be frank. Back in the general election, he massively over-exceeded people's expectations, didn't he?
Yeah, but people are going to come to their senses now, Nigel. All the magic money tree rubbish they keep talking. And look at Diane Abbott. Every time she opens her mouth, she puts both feet in it.
Were you surprised that he put her back on the front bench?
I was amazed. I think he should have sacked her. And who are these people who vote her back in every time? Are they crazy? Can't they see she's totally incompetent?
Well, I think the truth of it is, Mervyn, we don't vote for MPs, we don't vote for individuals, we vote for national parties and for leaders. We've got an electoral system where, frankly, there's become a detachment between how we vote and who the MP is. So it's a safe Labour seat or a safe Tory seat. Frankly, it almost doesn't really matter who you are. And that is a failing, I think, in our system. But there we are. That's what we got. So, Mervyn, you think you've got no chance because when it comes to it, we're not going to be tempted by extremism, yeah?
No, we're not going to vote for the left wing, the extreme left wing. I mean, they've got sort of communist backgrounds, but they say they don't back communism, but they do. It's documented they back communism.
Well, I mean, McDonnell, you know, the Shadow Chancellor. Yeah, I mean, you know, you are dealing with someone there who thinks Marx still has a constructive role to play. Indeed, Jeremy Corbyn takes that view too.
Of course, yeah. I mean, they're just making fools of themselves, saying we're governed carefully, that we're governed by Marx. You know, it's stupid.
OK, well, we've had some big supporters of Corbyn. Mervyn's not one. I get on text. Asking if Labour is ready for government is like asking whether ketchup tastes good on ice cream. So we're getting both sides of the political view here. And I'm getting very confused on time because I'm way out west in America where it's 11:30. But that means it's 7:30 in London. I think Jeremy Corbyn's had quite a good day, really. I mean, he's being treated as a hero at the Labour Party conference. He's exceeded expectations this year. He was pretty upbeat. And I'm asking you the question, is Labour ready for government? And I may not think it is ready. I don't believe it's got the experience, but Corbyn is having a good year. So I'm doing this Twitter poll. I talked about it earlier. You can get involved by answering the question, is Labour ready for government, by going to @Nigel_Farage or @LBC and voting on Twitter. So far, over 3,500 of you have voted, and 47% of you say yes, Labour are ready for power, and 53% say no, which, in a sense, reflects the sort of phone calls, the polite ones, and texts and tweets that we've had so far. Now, I've mentioned this before this week, the online auction. I'm looking for somebody to bid to have lunch with me. It's going to take place on a Friday afternoon. It'll be at Franco's Italian restaurant in London, who generously have put this prize forward. And we're doing it all for Global Radio, which LBC is a part of, their Make Some Noise charity, which is there to help youngsters and their families living with illness, disability, or a lack of opportunity. The idea is that we can make a big difference to people's lives. So the auction prize is currently open for bids online. It closes at 7:45 on the 5th of October. You've got to be 18 to enter, and to do it, you go to lbc.co.uk to bid now and to read all those important terms and conditions. And at the moment, £2,800 is the biggest bid we have in to have lunch with me on a Friday afternoon for Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. Now, a very highly contentious issue has sort of hit the front. I guessed it would, and it is our divorce bill with the European Union and what long-term commitments we have. Now, it's always seemed to me that beyond our pre-agreed spending, the one area that could provide contention is the issue of EU pensions. And that's because ever since we joined back in 1973, there have been people from our country that have worked for the European Commission, other agencies of the EU. We've even had a few hundred people who've been MEPs as well. So what is the state of play with EU pensions? And I think it's perhaps worth having a look at this. The average Eurocrat, so mid-ranking, average Eurocrat who works for, let's say, for the European Commission, they can retire at 62 and receive a pension on average of 46,000 sterling a year. Some of them get pensions that are very much bigger than that. And for MEPs, well, an MEP's pension under the current scheme that's been going since 2009 is they would get 17,000 euros, so let's say £15,000, as a pension for every 5-year term that they had completed. And interestingly, they haven't made contributions towards that either. So it's contentious because the pensions are big. They massively dwarf anything that anybody in this country could ever expect to get. But the outstanding liabilities for these pensions are something like 60 billion sterling. And the European Union is saying that we owe 10 billion of them as our payoff for that. Now, look, given that only 4% of employees that work in the European Commission are British, the idea that we should pay 10 out of 60, frankly, is ludicrous. And can I suggest, Mrs. May, and to your team, that rather than us paying them a lump sum of money, what we do is we take the pensioners, whether they're commissioners, or commission employees, or former MEPs, and we take them off the EU's books and put them onto the UK books so that the break when we leave is as clean as possible. That is my view. We'll see. Back to the question, is Labour ready for government? Does Corbyn have the answer? Does his team have the experience? And here we are, you see on Twitter, Jeremy Corbyn would be the best PM Britain could ever have. An honest man with integrity, says Tim on Twitter. And Tim, there are a lot of you out there who do think the great thing about Corbyn is he answers the question and he comes across as being sincere. Others think he's a Marxist, way left, would take us back to the failed policies of the 1970s. I wonder where Raj, who's calling from Bournemouth, sits in this debate. Good evening.
Hi there. Hi, Nigel. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you.
Based on today, I think Labour really have a good chance of winning, but I really don't think they're ready at all. I think they would be absolutely disastrous for businesses. Small and medium businesses are currently suffering because the Tories have done, they're really not doing anything, and I think McDonnell and Corbyn, rather than creating wealth, they would just be concerned with sharing wealth. And you would see a lot of small and medium-sized businesses collapse. I think, you've got a long history in finance, in the finance sector. Do you think McDonnell or Corbyn or any of them would be good for the city?
Well, I'm not so worried about the city. I'm worried about the overall shape of the economy. And I think my view is that they don't seem to understand basic economics. And I wonder what size the budget deficit would be if these people were in power, which is why, of course, already they're talking about if Labour wins, there'll be a run on the pound and all the rest of it. No, I don't think that the Labour Party have any, or this leadership team have any conception of what genuine free market capitalism is. They actually despise and resent it. And without free market capitalism, and by that I mean, men and women having the ability to set up their own businesses, to get on, to make money, to employ people, to pay tax. Without that, we suffer as an economy. The biggest disappointment, Raj, I think, is that your comment about the Conservatives is absolutely right, because they seem to be completely bound in to what I call corporatism, where politics worries about what the multinationals and the big businesses say and doesn't do a blooming thing for small business. Do you run a small business, Raj?
I don't. I work for someone who has a small business, and politicians across everywhere love to say, small businesses are the backbone of the country.
Oh, yeah.
It means nothing.
And they don't do a damn thing.
His wage costs have gone through the roof. Business rates have gone through the roof. Corporation tax has decreased, but when you're not making profits, it doesn't make a difference.
yes, you can't pay it. It's irrelevant what the tax rate is if you're not making a profit, isn't it, really? I mean...
Exactly. And then
Raj,
you've got... Yeah. Could I just?
And it's worth pointing out. It's worth pointing out, Raj, just quickly on this point. It's worth pointing out to people. People are shocked by this number, but there are now 5.2 million people in the UK who are self-employed, small business owners, or independent contractors. It's a lot of people in this category, and I don't think anybody in British government speaks for them, least of all Labour, who I don't think understand them at all. Raj, you had one more point.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just saying about what you were saying about our UK obligations to the EU. And something that you always say, I don't think we should even mention figures until EU's figures are fully audited. I wouldn't trust their pension liabilities unless a proper consultancy has gone through and valued them.
Well, rather than having the row about their figures, which have probably been plucked out of the air, rather than having the row, we just say, look, there are 22,000 people who are getting EU pensions, who are British citizens. We will simply take them off your hands and we will pay them ourselves, rather than it being part of a divorce bill. That strikes me. There won't be an argument that goes on for months as to what the right figure is, and it helps us have a clean break. Raj, I thank you very much indeed. Chris on the Wirral is calling. Is Labour ready for government, Chris?
No, for me, he's not a man that can lead our country with his views. He don't even sing the national anthem. He doesn't support the army. He's disgraceful, really. But for me, all the ideas are flawed. They want to build 100,000 houses a year, and we'll have too many after 5 years. We're going to be 300,000 short, and he wants to bring in so many refugees. Only 18 months ago, he was campaigning to bring in 100k a year of refugees.
Yes.
But
he did talk, Chris. He did talk today, Chris, about immigration, where he said he would not sign up to any artificial limits. And I kind of take that to mean that despite, in the manifesto and in the election talking about, open door immigration ending, I can't see it ending under Corbyn, can you?
No chance. Not a chance. We had 350,000 Europeans come here. I work with a load of them. I get on with them. I like them. It's not that I want out of Brexit. But 350,000 a year coming here, and we've got a housing shortage. He wants to build all these houses dead quickly. It'll take loads of workers. It'll just happen like 10 years ago. They're all on £30 an hour. They're all maxing their credit cards out, getting mortgages, and the next thing, they've got too many houses. They've all got no work again. And then
I tell you what, I don't foresee a situation, Chris, in which we have too much housing in the short term. But I understand the point you made. So for you, Corbyn simply isn't patriotic enough to lead this country. Is that really what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah.
No chance. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:45. Are Labour ready for government? Well, point here that's being made by Lee and Dulwich, rather important one, I think. He says Corbyn hasn't got any Brexiteers in his shadow cabinet, and the best they can come up with is simply rebadging the single market. And Lee, this is important because they are. This Labour Party is a London metropolitan elite. They've turned their backs on their promises of controlling immigration. They've completely turned their back when it comes to the idea that Britain was going to leave the single market under them. Now, very clearly, it isn't. And much as he may be very popular at the moment and people think he's genuine and sincere, when it, in the next few years play out, how are they going to reach out to Brexit voters in Wales and the north of England and places like that? I just think they're going to struggle. I think ultimately the direction they're going in seems to me they're actually not going to get to government unless, of course, the Tories have a complete catastrophe, which, given the way they're going, isn't totally impossible. Now, my next caller is Den, who is calling from Walton-on-the-Naze, a place I know and like very much. Den, good evening.
Very good evening to you, Nigel. First-time caller.
Well, welcome to you. The reason I like Walton-on-the-Naze, apart from the fact that it's a great place, is it was the first place in the whole country, a few years ago, to put up a statue to a private soldier. It had never happened anywhere in the UK before, and the people of Walton got the money together, it was about £40,000, and put up a statue to Private Columbine, who'd lived in Walton-on-the-Naze, and who in 1918, in the big German attack on the Western Front, was part of a machine gun crew, and his last words, famously, to the rest of the crew were, "Off you go, lads. I can handle this." And,
and it was also your first constituency as well.
And he held off. He held off the attacking Germans for goodness knows. And in the end, they got him through aerial bombing, and he got a posthumous Victoria Cross, and his statue is on the seafront there in Walton-on-the-Naze. Now, that's all completely irrelevant, but I think it's interesting. Den, what's your point? Is Corbyn and Labour ready for power?
Absolutely not, in my opinion. I'm supposed to be their target audience, being 20 years old, but my friends think I'm nuts. I voted Brexit, and I also voted Conservative, so I'm seen as a bit nuts to my friends. So,
now tell me, Den, you're 20. What is it? Yeah. What is it with your age bracket? Why do they think Corbyn is so great? Why is he? I mean, is he really this cool figure to them?
He's like God to them, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's like the like today is like a festival rather than a party conference. You're like Glastonbury or something. So, but I just personally, I don't know where he's going to find the money from. Is my biggest thing.
Sure.
And it all sounds absolutely absolutely lovely. But he also, everyone says he's got like a lot of principles. I don't think he's got any principles whatsoever. The day after the Brexit referendum, he said he was going to trigger Article 50 straight away. I mean, even I thought, blimey, he's doing it pretty quick. And now he wants to take years and years and years. I just feel like he just changes his mind depending on public opinion.
Well, he did very well. He did very well in the general election, didn't he? To get Remainers in the South to vote for him, and Leavers in the North to vote for him. But Dan, let me ask you, why do 20... I've got a friend who owns a nightclub in North Kent. He said a week after the general election, Saturday night, hundreds of people, your age group, on the dance floor, chanting, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn." I mean, why? What is it they see, Dan?
It's a good question. I mean, I suppose what they're seeing, in their eyes, they're seeing a Conservative government, which is really dull. I mean, it's like having a roast dinner without the gravy at the moment. The Conservative...
Well, you're not telling me, surely, you don't think Philip Hammond's dull, do you? Or Damien Green? I mean, surely they're the life and soul of the party, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be great, wouldn't they? I just think they're not... in my opinion, I mean, I'm a bit different to my friends, I think, but I just don't think they're sensible. To me, I just see through it. I don't see them. I just think they're just saying things to be popular. And I did actually, at the very start, I did respect Jeremy Corbyn. I thought, I'm not going to agree with him because I don't believe in socialism. But I did respect him. I thought he does seem principled and honest, and he'd probably be quite healthy for politics. But he's just like everybody else, to be quite honest with you. He just... in my opinion, he just lies and twists things, and the biggest thing, he changes opinion depending on what the public thinks. The popular thing to say.
They have chopped and changed. Den, terrific phone call. You will go look at the statue, won't you?
Oh, absolutely, I will.
All right.
Look into that a bit more because I didn't know much about it myself. So.
Get a photograph of you there and send it to me on Twitter, okay? Talking of which, our Twitter poll is about to close. Joe in Sheffield. Is this Labour Party really, as Corbyn said today in Brighton, with some confidence, ready for government?
Yes, I think so. And though I've not been a Labour voter ever in England, I voted UKIP and Conservatives. I think they are ready. One, because there needs to be proper investment in the social services, in education, in health, in child care and all that. And I don't think the Tories are serious in doing that. Then number two, there's a massive problem with tax avoidance and evasion. And I don't think the Tories are serious in tackling that. Then number 3, the productivity level of England is so poor compared to other nations we are competing with in the OECD. And there needs to be a massive investment in the social infrastructure in these countries, in bridges, in schools, in rail tracks and all that. And I don't think the Tories are serious in investment in infrastructure that really needs to boost England's economy for a Brexit, post-Brexit economy. So for that, I think, yeah.
Fine. Joe, just quickly, where do you think the money's going to come from for all this massive investment?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of taxation. I accept that. 80,000, and if you're earning above 80,000, I think they said in their last manifesto, there's going to be some borrowing. Interest rate is so low now. Take advantage of that. We don't have to wait till 4 or 5 years' time when interest rates are high.
Fine. Joe, thank you. And Joe actually putting out there, tax and spend. Tax and spend, that is how we're going to get investment in our public services. Corbyn merely adapts to who he speaks to and promises the earth. He, along with his party, would be catastrophic to this nation, says John by text. Indy is calling me from Woodford. Good evening.
Evening, Nigel.
Good evening. So, are they up to it?
No. Not absolutely 100% no. They are economically illiterate, completely. I mean, this is a guy who actually favoured Venezuela's economic policy. And now that it's completely failed, we hear nothing from him at all about exactly what happened, all the things that he actually advocated. I mean, he's also appeared on Maduro's radio show praising him for what he's actually achieved.
And this is a guy who was accused internationally of some pretty serious human rights abuses too, isn't he?
But of course. But it's very easy for him to criticise Trump and call him somebody a dictator. But when it actually comes down to somebody that he actually supported in the past who actually is a dictator, he's got nothing to say. I find it so surprising that actually someone like him, people actually think he's principled. I don't see any principles in him whatsoever, at all. I think he's somebody who changes with the wind, will say anything to get elected, and you can't believe a word he says. I mean, here is somebody who's been a Eurosceptic since he's been an MP, since he's been in politics.
I know. And
the actual vote, he bottles it, completely bottles it, and tells everyone to vote Remain.
Because that's where his parliamentary party push him. So basically, he's not the principled man that he's coming across at the moment. And is he going to get found out, Indy, over the course of the next couple of years, in your view?
It all depends on who the Conservative leader is. Yeah. I think his ideas, if challenged with a true Conservative, somebody who's got real Conservative ideas, his ideas don't hold any water. But unfortunately, I don't think Theresa May's up to that job at all. And if the Conservatives pick the right leader who can actually challenge him and actually debate him on his policy platform, he should get destroyed in any general election.
Yeah. Okay. No, Indy, thank you. Another first-time caller. Well, look, I don't think they're ready for it at all. I don't think they've got the experience. And I think ultimately, if the election is, 4.5 years away and the Tories vaguely hold together, I don't think the policies, their London-centric policies, will actually reach out and win them seats where they need to win in South Wales, the North, and areas where they've got to start winning seats back from the Tories. Your online Twitter poll, 6,600 of you voted, which is pretty good engagement. 47% say yes, Labour is ready for government. 53% say no. 47% is a pretty big number. I just don't think they're ready. Personally, I could be wrong. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm going to miss you tomorrow, sadly, but I'm back on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Coming up at 10 o'clock tonight, it's Majid Nawaz, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Coming up at 9, it's the...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.